Thanks, Sarah. Welcome, everyone, to the global virtual launch of the amazingly astonishing story by Lucy Gannon. I think 2019 was a good year for Sarah because 2 or 3 really top-class books landed on my desk, and 2020 is the culmination of that, and we've published all of them. I think none better than the amazingly astonishing story. It's when I saw it first, I thought, gosh, there's a title that's needs some living up to, but my goodness, it really does. And well, I don't want to take up more time than we need to out of this this precious hour that we've got. We've got Arthur Smith, who's going to read an excerpt from the book for us, but let's go straight over to St Dogmaels and Lucy and Anne.
Hi, welcome to St Dogmaels. I'm here with Lucy for the evening. Just so you know, we're actually in a bubble, household bubble, for anyone who's worrying, because Wales is out of lockdown, but our households, 2 households, have bubbled together. And so to start the evening off, Arthur Smith is going to read a piece, then we're going to come back, ask a few questions. Lucy and I have a quick chat. Lucy's going to read, and then there's open for some more questions from everyone. So over to Arthur.
If you're looking at the photos at the screen and thinking, I know that bloke, where do I know him from? It's Arthur Smith, Knight Mayor of Balham.
Yeah, I don't do days, but let me say how much I enjoyed this beautiful and sad and hilarious book. The tale of written in the style of the girl she was at that age, and even some of her essays from then appear. And good old Mrs. Ash, the teacher, and the book is just so extravagantly good. I really enjoyed it, and she's reminded me of things as well, like Dixon of Dock Green. I'd forgotten about him, and Bunty magazine. Anyway, we might hear more about those afterwards. The book starts with a poem which Lucy has written, which is so heartfelt and so true of what is to come in the story of the army brat as she makes her way in the world. So this is the little poem at the front called I Want to Write. I want to write something that will take all I know and all I have experienced and all I have dreamed and present it to the world so that the world says, ah, that's what life is about. And now we see, and that makes sense. I want to hold out on my open palm tragedy and love and courage and cruelty and hope, saying, look who you are. This is you. No wonder God loves you so. And I want the world to see the rich and teeming, chaotic and bleeding, precious, perished world in my hand, and recognise the God who made it all, who loves it all, who pities and cherishes in equal measure. I want to write the world he loves, and I want the world to see. And when I've done all that, I'll have a bacon sandwich. Classic finish there, Lucy. Thank you. Big gag at the end. And on Lucy's request, I'm going to tell an old gag, which is sort of appropriate for the 60s and 70s when the book is set, and 50s, which is my father's, who was a copper in South London, and he was a soldier as well in the war. He was captured at El Alamein, blah, blah. I'm writing a book about him. Wait for that one. Sarah, I'll sign you up. But this is a joke that he always used to like. So a man goes to the doctor and he says, Doctor, my poo is coming out in little cubes. And the doctor says, right, stand up, turn around, take your shirt off. And there's a bit of snipping. And then the doctor says, you should be all right now. And the man says, well, what have you done? He says, I've just cut 6 inches off the bottom of your string vest. And string vests, of course, mean nothing to your millennials, I don't think. So thank you. I really think the book is exquisite and heartfelt and lives up entirely to the poem that you put at the front. So thank you, Lucy. And I shall now hand over to the next bit and listen in with some pleasure.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur. On to Lucy and this fantastic book that has been, you've been kind of tuning it away, but you started, and I think you started with when you first wrote Fat Little Thing, and you won the Writers Guild in 2017. Yeah. So, which came first, or were they hand in hand?
Well, I wrote Fat Little Thing for radio. Actually, I think I wrote it first as a stage play, and then thought it doesn't work as a stage play. So I wrote it for radio. Radio put it on, which takes like 18 months. I mean, BBC radio is slow. And it was quite successful. I enjoyed doing it. But I thought, actually, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to my life than this little tiny pocket. And so I started writing, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And before I knew where I was halfway through a book, which is good.
Yeah. So, and you've you know, I've seen you kind of writing over the years, and when you write a screenplay, you are astonishingly fast. I mean, you will invite us over for tea and then say you've got a deadline the next day. I'm giving things away to people who work with her. She starts it in the evening, and then the next morning you see her on the beach and she's done it.
Yeah.
So, how did you find the differences working?
Oh, it's fantastic, because it's just you and the page, and there's not going to be a director, there's not going to be a producer, there's not going to be script editors, there's not going to be locations saying, oh, you can't do it here, there's not going to be costumes saying, oh, we can't afford this, you know, there's not going to be any of that. There's just you and your imagination, and you step right in, and there's nobody who can say it's rubbish until the very end, so you can kid yourself for a whole year. It's fantastic. Okay. I'm quite good at kidding myself that.
So did you find it easier to write than a screenplay, harder? What were the differences in actual writing a book?
It's different. All I can say is it's very, very different. I miss the team. The one thing I miss about not being in TV anymore, and I mean, I'm slowly getting back into it, but I have over the last 5 years really missed the team. So although it was lovely to write without the team, I also miss the team. So I like both. I want to do both. I want to write a book. I want to write a radio play. I want to write a TV series, and then I'll be happy.
And when you're writing, you've discussed before, especially with screenplays, is that you talk about your mindset. So you've got your critical brain, and then you've got the imagination, your theta brain. How did that change? Because I know with your screenwriting, you create these complete worlds and things from what appears to be nothing. With this, you're actually looking at. So this is something that's actually happened.
There were bits of this that were quite painful to write. I mean, I do remember, I was just thinking about, last night, I wrote a stage play, I wrote a TV film with Amanda Burton a long time ago about somebody who was dying of breast cancer. And I remember at one point, I came out of my study at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and George was just getting out of the bedroom and going to the loo. And as I came out of my study, I'd been crying as I wrote it. And I was holding my breast like this as I walked. And he was very Scottish and very down to earth. And he stopped and says, oh, for God's sake, Luce, can't you write something happy? And I think there were points in this book when I felt the same. I thought, oh, for goodness sake, write something that hasn't got that undertow of sadness. But life is sadness. It's both, isn't it? It's the joy on the one side and the sadness on the other. And I did enjoy sort of jumping into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you know that the other thing you're saying about writing it is you actually. So one of the questions I had earlier from someone on the beach this morning, Sue, said wanting to know if it's you on the cover.
Yeah,
and it is. But your description and the voice you give it, you're very hard. You're very hard on yourself and her, or she's very hard on herself.
Yeah,
Can you kind of elaborate?
I think that, you know, the radio play, which was called Fat Little Thing, my stepmother brought me up to believe that I was hugely fat and completely ugly and completely unacceptable. And when I look back at the photos now, I was just a normal kid. I was just absolutely normal. And I know that when I went into the army, you know, when I left school, I was a size 14. So where did this fat little child come from? It was just in her mind, because she couldn't say to me, you're ugly, you're unacceptable in public. But in public, she could say, oh, she's a fat little thing, you know? And
so was she using it as humour, or was she?
no.
So you had to get into her voice as much as her head as well. And how did you find that?
That's difficult. Now, Mick's sitting there. Mick has asked me if I would do a book looking at my stepmother. And I have to say, having started it, I can't. I can't get into her head. It's impossible. I think she's so grief-stricken, so broken-hearted. She's just such a fractured personality. I found it impossible to write her.
But there's also bits where she's quite cruel, like we were saying today, when you hurt your thumb, and you're not giving anything away, but there's bits with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's other bits as well, how she comes in.
But sadness can make you cruel. I think, I don't think she ever set out to be a cruel stepmother. Somebody wrote to me an email, Alex sent me an email saying, you're a wicked stepmother. And she wasn't wicked, she was broken-hearted. And being broken-hearted makes you do strange things.
Because, I didn't come away reading the book feeling that it was, it is kind of, there's sadness in it, but it's actually quite an uplifting
I hope
book.
so.
And the other thing is, I want to know what happened next, which I keep telling you, you need a sequel. So
I don't know what happens next. Shall I read you a bit? Shall I?
Yes.
Shall I avoid that question?
Yes, avoid it completely.
I'll read you. I don't know how many of you have got the book. I know there was a problem with distribution, so not many of you may have it. I don't choose the pattern. I'll do. When my dad left the army, he didn't drive, so he started taking driving lessons, and this is all about that. So I was about at this time. I was at about 10. So I'm writing it in a 10-year-old's voice. And we have a car. It's a blue Standard 8 Companion, and it has red seats, and Dad is a really terrible driver. That's what Norman says. Norman gave Dad his first lesson, and afterwards he polished off all Daddy's birthday whiskey for shock. Daddy said it would have been cheaper to buy the bloody driving school. Dad buggers and panics when it kangaroo hops, but Norman swears really terrible swears. I'm not to tell Mum about the swearing, or she won't let me come again. And at least it gets me out from under her feet, because she can't think with me there, forever getting in the way. Last week I was in the back seat, sort of daydreaming and sleepy. And suddenly we did a kangaroo hop, and Norman sucked in his breath, and Dad swore a bad word he usually never swears, and the engine stopped. So I looked up, and we were halfway over a big road, with lots of cars and lorries and things, loads of them. And we were stuck sort of sideways in the middle. And there was a car coming towards us on my side and another car coming towards us on Dad's side. And Norman said, all squeaky and loud, don't panic, they've seen you. And Daddy swore again and did something to the engine. And we hopped a bit and stopped again. And Norman said, fuck a fucking brick, shit bugger, which is really quite bad, even for Norman. And Dad did something else to the engine, and we hopped once, twice, and the car on my side did a swerve around us, blowing its horn like mad, and it shook the whole car, it went so close. And now we were right in front of another car coming the other way, and it was big and black, and I looked at Dad in the mirror, and he had his eyes shut. Norman shouted this big, loud shout, fuck me, ignition on, clutch on, you can do this. But Dad made a sort of puppy noise, and put his head on the wheel. And whoosh, the black car was past us. And now a lorry was coming, and I could see the driver, and he had his mouth open, and he was sort of standing up behind his steering wheel. And his lorry went a bit sideways, and there was this crunch moment when you duck down, even though it isn't going to help. And you hold your breath, even though that won't help. Then the lorry stopped, and we could hear the engine clanking. And we sat there in silence for a minute. And you could feel lumps of dust falling down in the air. And everything was cold. My neck was wet, and I don't know why, so was Dad's. Then Norman said, all gentle and fierce at the same time, get the fuck out of that fucking seat, you bloody fucking idiot. And Dad got out, and Norman swished across, and Dad walked round and got into Norman's seat, and Norman waved sorry to everyone, and we moved on across the road. No one said anything for ages. Then Norman said, sorry about the language, Luce. And I said, it's okay.
Oh, thank you, that's wonderful. So, do you want to open it up? I know people have been asking, I've got some questions. Sarah with Saren was saying she's got a couple of people who are interested.
Yeah, so we had one question come through on email, but if anyone else would like to ask anything, please put it up in the chat and I will put it to Lucy in a moment. So this one came from Henk Smit.
I see.
So on the in the blurb for the book, it says she discovered a flair for writing, and in the nuns she found warmth and understanding. And Henk's question is, do you think this warmth and understanding is the reason for your deep loving care for people, the compassion you have for your friends, your neighbours and your community?
Henk, you don't know me very well, mate. I thought you knew me better than that. I think that, all through my life, I think it says somewhere in the book, in my thanks, that there's been a thread of kindness running through. There's always been kindness. My brother Martin was very kind. The nuns were very kind. Father Sullivan was very kind. My friend Beth, and I think wherever you go in life, there are always kind people. There's always, and that's what says to you, take courage. Carry on, there's better to come. So yeah, the nuns were great for me. They were lovely. They were Irish. They were quite poorly educated, most of them, but they had lovely, warm hearts.
So Dawn has asked, I would like to know why now?
Dawn French.
Yeah.
I have got a mortgage to pay, mate, come on. Why now? I think because I'm looking back on my life and because it's beginning to make sense to me, really. And I think it's taken this long for it to make sense. And I think because in the last 5 years, I have found God in a very new and direct and real way, which has made me see life with a new perspective and with a sort of forgiveness and an acceptance and a joy that I didn't have before. That's why now. I couldn't have written it 10 years ago, I don't think.
Because watching you seem to, when we're seeing you're writing. I mean, you always write, but you're writing every day. And you look, when we're talking to you, you've got so many ideas and so many, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
So do you feel any kind of pull away from the book into TV again now, or do you think they can kind of go hand in hand? Would you like to?
I think they can go hand in hand because the thing with TV now is everything's so slow. Tim Whitby's laughing down there. I can see you, Tim Whitby, producer. Everything in TV is so slow now, and nobody wants my ideas in TV. That's the truth of it. They want slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. They want a twist and a turn every 5 minutes, and that's not the drama that I write. So I think it would be quite hard for me to get back into TV. I mean, I'm doing something at the moment, but I very much doubt if it will be taken up. Whereas I love writing my blog, and I love writing books, so I think I'll probably stick with that.
And have you thought much about the next book?
She keeps going on about the next book, doesn't she? Let me introduce you to my unofficial agent. I had written this book and I sent it out to a couple of publishers, and they'd both been quite interested. One had come back and said, yes, we want it. Can we have whatever it's called, when you don't offer it to anybody else? And then after about a week, somebody came back from holiday and said, no, we don't want it. So I just thought, oh, well, I won't bother. Madam wouldn't let me drop it. She was my unofficial agent. She phoned up Seren or emailed Seren and said, look, there's this book that you've got to read. So, and now here she is nagging me about number 2.
Yes, it's true.
I don't know.
I know at the end of it, I wanted to know the next bit. I think you leave it.
Yeah.
You've left it that you want to know more.
Well, the next bit is the army, and then it's nursing, and then it's the first marriage, which went down the hill very quickly. Yeah, maybe there'll be another one.
Yeah, I think you should.
Yeah.
I think you should.
There's been some more questions come through. If we want to see another one. So this one is from Beth. extract Lucy read really summed up the brilliance of her writing for me. When I read one of her scripts or see or hear one, there's a point in it where you just get a terrible shock, like just where Lucy said Dad had his eyes closed. So my question is, do you think about this, or do you think you're a born dramatist? She thinks you are. Then she has another question, but I'll let you answer that one first.
Well, my dad used to say he had 3 children and they'd all got their heads full of nonsense, but only one of them got paid for it. And I think that's it. My head is full of nonsense. And I don't know. I mean, the characters jump into my head fully clothed and speaking and all the rest of it. And my problem is always finding a story to hang it on. I cannot find stories for the life of me. For years, I kept saying to Kev's there, I want to do something for Lewis. I want to do something for Lewis. And he would say, yeah, do something for Lewis for the next years. I could never think of a story. And finally, I came up with this really tragic story. Just because my brother had died, because I was sitting at the traffic lights one day and looking across the road and realizing there's the undertakers and there's my brother's body is in there. And out of that, a story spun. But I'm not good with stories. No.
So I suppose this leads on to the second part of Beth's question, which is, what is the favourite thing that you've written?
Bramwell. 3 series of Bramwell and 2 films. Definitely Bramwell. Yeah.
So if this, or when this book gets adapted, would you see it being adapted as a radio or TV? Could you see it?
I don't think you could adapt it because it's all done in the child's voice, so it just drive me mad to have a child chuntering on for an hour and a half or whatever, wouldn't it? It'd just be awful. Hey, little piping voice. No, thank you.
No, you wouldn't adapt it.
No.
But not even like for radio. It'd be great being read on radio. If you've got anyone in...
Yeah, Dawn could read it for radio.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
I'm getting very sycophantic with you all tonight, you know. It's fine.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so would you like to read another?
I'll read another little bit, which is, I just found this just before we started. It's quite hard. You know, if some of you haven't read the book, it's quite hard knowing which bits to read from. Yeah. But here's a little bit, which is, when I'd just gone to senior school and I discovered that I was quite good at English. And I met this wonderful teacher called Mary Ash, who I think now is dead. She must be about 100 if she's still alive. And I really liked her right from the start. And then I write this, I say, I may have been wrong about Mrs. Ash. She's very friendly and seems like she's nice. But we just got our first English essays back and I have to stop saying and, lovely and nice. I also have to say which is a bit less, which is impossible. And I should try to find another way of saying a bit and stuff. I had the highest mark of all the essays, but it was still only 6 out of 10, which is a bit mean. And we shouldn't say we walked round unless we are spherical, which we are not. We should say we walked around. But then she read my essay out and we all enjoyed it, even me, because it's like someone else wrote it, because she read it like it was proper English, not Goldwyn English. She said she looked forward to teaching me for the next 7 years, which was lovely. Nice. It's not going to be easy. I have to go through my essay and underline all the words she talked about, and there are 32 ands, 7 nices and 4 lovelies, which doesn't seem that terrible. And I wrote which 5 times, and there are 2 stuffs, but only 1 bit, so I don't know what all the fuss was about. My full stops are too haphazard, and I mustn't shove one down and then have second thoughts and bung another one in 2 words, like this. I thought I was going to be good at English, but now I'm not good at anything much. It's okay, though, because nobody else is either. For homework, we have to write 2 sides about the party. I've never been to a party. That's not true. I have, but it was years ago and it was very boring. I went to a wedding party in Cyprus with that old Ioka man and 2 women who spat at me. But that's too rude to put in a proper essay. I'm a bit stuck. Mrs. Ash said it's good to have a flight of fancy, but try to make it real. She reads us poetry, but it's good. It's not stupid. And then she said that because Beth and me were so good at reciting it, we could all study Horatius, and it's even better than we thought it was. To every man upon this earth, death cometh soon or late, which is true when you think about it. And it gave me an idea about my essay. Shall I read the essay?
Yeah, go.
It's called The Party That Never Was, Lucy Gannon, 1W. When I was nearly 7 and we lived in Ulster, my mammy said I could have a birthday party because I'd never had one, except for Egypt, which didn't count because I got heat stroke and ended up in bed with a mosquito net and a metal bowl to be sick in. We were a right pair that day, me in my room being sick and moaning, and mammy in hers with something in her head which we didn't know about yet. It was a good party, even without the birthday girl to blow out the candles. That's what my friend Barry told me the next day when he came to see if I was still alive, which I was. But now we were in Ulster, so there was no danger of me getting heat stroke this time. Mammy said I could have a cake, and we were going to play musical chairs and pass the parcel. My Auntie Nellie came all the way from Lancashire to Oma to help, because Mammy saw 2 dustbin men when there was only one, and she said, "How funny, they must be twins." And Daddy went very quiet, and I knew it was something important, but I didn't know what. After that, sometimes Mammy couldn't see, and it was all a nuisance. And she would laugh when she dropped things, but I didn't think it was funny, because she'd pick it up, the book or the spoon, and put it back in her hand, and she'd drop it all over again. Sometimes when she laughed, I thought maybe she was crying, but she wasn't, she told me. Auntie Nellie came to make the tea so we wouldn't end up with chopped finger sandwiches instead of chopped ham. When we'd set the table and I'd sung to Auntie Nellie about her wooden belly, just before any of the party children came, the doctor knocked on the door and took Dad into the kitchen, and Auntie Nellie gave me a chocolate biscuit and told me to sit quietly and wait for everyone. The doctor's a Protestant and an army doctor, so he's not great with wives, that's what Dad says. Trench foot and shrapnel is what he's good at. When I saw Colum, a fat lad with glasses from school, come up the path, I jumped up and opened the door, and he had a present for me, and I was happy. Then Auntie Nellie came and said sorry, but it was all cancelled, and Dad went up the stairs with the doctor, and his face was all grey and strange, and I started crying. I wasn't crying about the party. I didn't know what I was crying about, but it was something terrible. I didn't like that doctor. He was always saying, "It's probably nothing," but you knew he just wanted to get away. Dad said he was in Egypt, which is Irish for idiot. I never did have a birthday party. When I was 8, we were living with Auntie Nellie, so Mummy could die where she grew up, and Daddy was on compassionate leave, and we all had other things to think about. But I got a catapult, which is what I had really prayed for. Joe Grimshaw was my new best friend, and he had one, so now we could have competitions. When I was 9, Dad married Mum, and we moved to Warminster, and I didn't know anyone to invite except Louise, who was Jehovah's Witness and didn't believe in birthdays. When I was 10, my brother Anthony had just died, and Mum was very poorly with her insides. When I was 11, Mum was very sad, and Dad said there was a season for everything, which meant not doing anything at all and being quiet. When I think of my 7th birthday party, the one that nearly happened, I can see the table and the cake and the jelly that wobbled like a belly, and I remember what it felt like when Mammy was upstairs in bed, and Auntie Nellie was crying, and how Dad closed the door after the doctor and sort of grabbed me and held me like I was a baby, but too tight. I can remember all of that really well and bright, like it was just this morning, but I can't remember what happened to all that food and the cake and everything. I don't know what happened to the wrap-up parcel. Maybe the whole party is up there in heaven with Mammy. Maybe Mammy is feeding little Anthony Gerard shimmering lumps of shining strawberry jelly on a golden spoon, and his little face is laughing, and all the angels are singing happy birthday to you, and they're all awash with coronation milk. The end.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Round of applause. So you capture that child's voice so well, but it's interesting then as you get older that you can see in your writing it changing. Was that quite hard to do?
No,
to do that?
Because you put yourself back in that place, then you do write as a 10-year-old or you do write as a 17-year-old. I write about the fact I got a summer job in a sausage factory. I love that job. And I was just reading that today thinking, I wonder if I should read that tonight, but it's not right. But it was very, very easy going from the 7-year-old to the 17-year-old.
Was there anything in writing the book that you wanted to give to people who would read it, that you wanted them to get from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's awkward because I don't think it's a book for children, but I think if somebody is an adult and has had a rough childhood and feels like they're not getting over it, and feels like maybe they have been marked for life for marred for life, maybe, just maybe, reading this book, they will feel that they're not.
And you also kind of say that one of the things about starting to write the book was everyone kept saying, you know, where do your ideas come from?
Yeah.
And it was like, this was the book, the start of it.
Yeah.
So could you?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of feel that an alternative title for this would have been What Makes a Writer? Because I think that everything that happened to me in my childhood and in my teenage years and in my first marriage, well, all the way through, that's what makes a writer. Life makes a writer. And in a way, the more secure and the more settled and loving relationship is, or the childhood is, I think, I may be completely wrong, but I think it must be quite hard to find stories and to reach in and to find emotions.
So in a way, that's your guidebook.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you know, I look back on my life and I see what the changes that have happened. I mean, you know, who would have thought that child, the child of a soldier, losing her mum, a strange teenage life, really strange. You know, I'm 72, I'm living in West Wales. I can't help that, I'm living in West Wales. But I'm happy, I am so happy. Even days when I'm really fed up, the underneath of me, the joy is there, I am happy. God has made something wonderful of my life, and I'm very grateful.
You've said before about the motivation about giving her a voice. That you thought that was important. That person. Could you?
I think children very often are robbed of their voices, and I think that I think there's a bit in the book where I say, you know, when your mum dies, you lose your place in the world, and I think I lost my place in the world, and I also lost my voice. And many years later, when I was working as what they called then a residential social worker in Derby with people who had mental health issues or mentally subnormal, I used to call them then. There was one young girl, I was her key worker, and she was about 30, and she would go into the corridor every day and she would stand and talk to the wall and just mutter to the wall. That's all she did all the time. And you'd say, Yvonne, come and have your breakfast, and you'd drag her away and you'd give her a breakfast, and she'd be back to the wall, talking to the wall. And they just gave up on her. They completely gave up on her. They stopped taking her to the work, you know, the industrial unit. They stopped training her. She was just stuck there as she was. And I just felt it was so wrong. So I wrote. I spoke to a social worker and they didn't want to know. I spoke to the people who ran the house, they didn't want to know. So I wrote to the Director of Social Services in Derbyshire. The next thing I know, there's a special meeting called of all members of staff, and the bloke sat there and he lifted up this letter that I had written and he said, I have received this. If I ever receive any communication from any of you ever again like this, you will be dismissed. I just didn't have a voice. Now, 2 years later, when I'd won the Richard Burton Drama Award and I was heading into TV and all the rest of it, he asked me to go back and talk to the staff, the same man. So really and truly, I think that a lot of what I write is for people who don't feel they have a voice. It's for ordinary people. It's not for left wing or right wing or wealthy or poor. It's for ordinary people to say you have a voice and your voice should be heard. And even the most ordinary things, you should be heard. I see that I've frozen. I see that our thing is frozen.
Yes, I was just going to say, you might need to try turning your camera off and back on again.
Okie dokie. Turn it off. So, and then turn it back on again.
There we go. You're back.
Yeah. So to me, you know, the important thing about writing is I saw this wonderful documentary yesterday, and if any of you haven't seen it, you must watch it, about Maggie Hamlin, the artist. And it's BBC, it's on Catch Up. It's fantastic. And at one point she's talking about truth. And to me, writing is all about writing, art, whatever, is all about trying to find the truth. And I don't want lies. I don't want the crown. You know, I don't want I don't want the spin. I want the truth. And that's what good writing is. It's the truth. And sometimes it's uncomfortable.
Well, I think you've done a remarkable job giving her that voice. And I actually think it does cross over as a young adult, well, children's book as well. You know, I could imagine myself reading it at sort of 10, 11.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do think there is a crossover. Sarah, have you got more questions?
Yes, there is. A few people are asking about the Beatles. So Mick puts it, one of the astonishing or amazing things about the book is the sudden appearance of the Beatles, and the narrative swings back to John Lennon at the end. Can Lucy expand on this?
It's just what happened. I mean, you know, we were very conscious of the Beatles, and I think we had sort of a crush on them, like just about everybody did in those days. But they were still sort of fairly early on in their careers. They weren't the superstars. It was a year before they started filming Hard Day's Night, maybe 2 years before they started filming Hard Day's Night. So they were still they were on the rise, and they were known, but they weren't massively, they weren't megastars. And we were just in the lab one day, or in the cookery room, I think it was, and we looked down and we saw this van thing unloading at the back of the pavilion, which is where all the vans used to be on a Friday and a Saturday evening. It can't be them, it can't be. And it was. So I can't remember now how many of us, I think there may be 3 of us ran down, and we sneaked down past the netball courts. We had to go duck under the hedge so that nobody would see us from the school. And we climbed up on the rockery, and there was a low wall, and you could look down onto the pavilion, and there was the van unloading, and there were the Beatles. And of course they got 3 or 4 schoolgirls all goggling them, so they came over and talked to us. Ringo had to go off and do something in town. I think it was something to do with his drum kit or something. He had to go and find a music book shop. George was in some sort of mood, so he barely talked to us. But John and Paul sat and talked to us for quite a while. I mean, as I remember it, probably 10 minutes. It's good. And of course, then John Lennon became something very important to me. I mean, I really fancied him. You know, he was just gorgeous. He was just absolutely gorgeous. And he'd been very nice to us, very kind to us. So all the way through my life, really, I was conscious of John. And then, you know, I finished the book when I hear that he's died. So that's how it comes. That's how the book ends.
You've frozen again. Can we try the video again?
Oh, have I?
Yeah.
Why does that happen? This is Wales, you know. We're supposed to have very good...
We've got the worst internet here.
No, I've got very good internet. It's all them that's got
Okay.
Another question come through here from Amanda Kendall. Does putting your own personal story out there into the world feel different from putting out the drama?
It does, you know, but it's very hard to put into words. I really enjoyed revisiting me. And I ended up quite liking me, which at the beginning I hadn't, I think. But I ended up thinking, yeah, you know, she's had a good life and she's had a funny life. And as I say, you know, when you're writing drama, you're very conscious of all the people you're going to be handing it on to. And you're very conscious that some idiot in the BBC is going to decide that they haven't got the money for it this year, or they don't want anything with a female lead, or they must have something with a female lead, or, you know, that you're just writing against a brick wall, really. Whereas when you're writing a book, you're just free to go. And you know that somebody like Mick will be on the end of it and he'll go, yes, a bit of luck.
Do you find it physically different? You know, does it take you a lot longer to write a page in that as to opposed to about
so quick. Yeah, it's really quick. And Tim will tell you, Tim's there, and he'll tell you that when we were doing Bramwell and things, I would do a new draft quicker than they had read the old draft. So I would have to send an email and say, sorry guys, don't read that last one, here's a new one.
And writing the book was the same.
Yeah, it was.
It just came.
And there were bits where, you know, I really struggled. You know, there was actually a strand going through it that Mick said to me, I think you need to take this out, and he was quite right. I took that strand out. There were bits that were hard to write, and I wanted to be fair to Nora, you know. When you look at Nora's life, she had one baby and that baby died, and that's tragic. That's really tragic.
Mm.
And she was left with me in the baby's place, which is not good.
So, but with your relationship, did it stay like that? Can I ask? Through
Well,
life after, you know, obviously your success, how was she?
Well,
or is that the next book?
It's probably the next book, I'll tell you. I stayed in touch with my mum and dad, and I supported them all the way through their old age, and I supported my dad with private nursing and all the rest of it. She became very proud of me in that sort of start right way, you know. She was proud of the fact that I had been a success, but she was always a little bit, she was stunned by me, really. She didn't know what to make of me. She couldn't understand that I'd made a success of my life and that I was happy and that I'd got a husband and a child. And
so she stayed being critical.
Yeah, but she had to subdue that.
Right.
It's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I can't write about her.
No, I can see that she'd be hard. But you do find in the book she is fully formed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what she felt
as a child, it was much easier than it is now.
Yes, yeah.
And I couldn't write in her voice, in her mind.
No. Okay. Any more questions? So are we?
Other than this one from Dawn French, just asking if you know how deeply you are loved, which is something I'm feeling from all the stuff you have here. Dawn,
you're easily pleased. That's all I can say. That's really kind. Thank you. Thank you.
But I do. That was the last question. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. I missed what you said there, Sarah. Sorry. We
I was just apologising for interrupting Lucy. Although you have frozen again.
Oh. Right. Hang on. There we go. There you go.
You're back.
Yeah.
I was just saying that was the last question. So unless anyone else has
more. Piers said he had some. Piers?
No,
he's gone.
He's gone. He hasn't sent anything through, is he? Piers? No, anyway.
Piers wanted to know if I'd always been such a miserable neighbour, such a bad neighbour. I have. That's why we moved a lot.
You moved a lot in the same village.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
There you go. Oh, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
And I'm so pleased the book's out. It's really exciting and it's a great read. I think everyone's read it who's watching. If not, good luck with it.
Thank you.
And I hope to see the next one.
Can we hear some people? Is it possible to hear some people talking?
Yes.
Sarah? Who wants to say something? Put your hand up.
So you should now be able to unmute yourselves. If someone does want to say anything, then feel free.
Love you.
I've got a question for you, Lucy. Can you hear me, Lucy?
Yeah, I can hear you, Piers.
Okay. Am I older than you or are you older than me?
I'm older than you by about 3 weeks, mate.
Is it 3 weeks?
So have a
I thought I was older.
Piers looks older.
Over the last few years, I've in conversation with you over coffee, I can't remember how many times you said, I said, I've finished. I'm not writing anymore. What's going on?
I don't know. I have no idea. I've had a bit of wine. I've got no idea.
I do have a question. Because I would like to know, Lucy, you seem to write a lot of the time you have an actor in mind when you're writing for television. And I just wondered, do you know who you would get to play yourself? Is there anyone? And what is it that you look for in an actor when you're writing? What quality is it that makes you think, I'd love to write for that person?
Well, Kev Waitley's here tonight, and Kev Waitley has murdered people for me. He's killed his wife for me. He's seduced his maid for me. You've done everything for me, haven't you, mate? So that's the sort of actor I like.
Yeah.
But I think if somebody was going to play me, probably not Kevin, probably Dawn.
He could.
You know, when I moved to this village, being of a certain shape and dark hair and all the rest of it, I think Dawn came once, and the rumour got around the village very, very quickly that Dawn and I were sisters. I'll probably get my sister to play me.
We are sisters, Lucy. We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parted at birth.
There's your fella in the background.
Hey, Lucy.
Hello. Are you all right?
I'm very well, thank you.
Who could play Nora?
Ooh. Tell you who would be good as Nora. Alison Steadman. She'd be very good as Nora.
Would she?
Yeah. Nora had ideas above her station. She wanted to be far more respectable than she was.
Okay.
Tim, speak to me. Tim Whitby.
Well, you haven't changed, Lucy. You know, when you read as an 8-year-old, it's just exactly the same. So,
Tim and Harriet were produced Bramwell, and they were my parents in drama.
What I did want to ask you, Luce, was do you have many records, or is that from your terrible head?
It's from my terrible head.
Because it is amazing, because it really feels like you've got the letters and the straight access. It's incredible.
But you know, I was trying to explain to somebody that it's not all memory. That, you know, it's a bit like the ghastly crown that's on at the moment. A lot of the conversations are made up. I just remember what the conversations were about, and some of it's absolutely remembered because you could never forget it. But a lot of it's just vague writing.
Well,
It's all truthful. There are no lies.
Yeah. It's great.
Well, it's lovely seeing you all. Hilary Bevan-Jones, all the way over there in Norfolk. Wow.
Lucy, what a treat. How lovely to see everyone. And lovely to hear you read. That was so beautiful. I'm going to order immediately. I thought I had to wait till tonight to order Stu Brothers. So I'm very excited.
So here tonight we've got America and Holland, and we've got South Africa somewhere, and we've got Norfolk. I mean, it's amazing. How lovely to see you all. Oh, we got Venetia Gribble from down the road. Yay! Hey, Venetia. And we've got Piers from opposite. Oh, good.
Lucy, I want to say something. I'm sorry you can't see me if my camera's not working, but I don't think anyone said enough about the craftsmanship that has gone into this, because it really is extraordinary reading it. And what you were saying just now about making up bits and not, as I was reading it, it was so seamless what you were doing that it was really hard. You know, when I read about the John Lennon, I thought you must have made it up, because you somehow managed to get a level of craftsmanship which I think I'd very rarely read in an autobiography, and it's a huge achievement.
Oh, thank you, Susanna. That's lovely, especially coming from you. That's really lovely. Thank you very much. There were bits that surprised me. You know, there's a little bit in the middle where little Lucy says, "One day I'll write a book and I'll call it the amazingly astonishing story." I didn't know that was going to happen, but it happened, and it was such a delight. And I didn't know I was going to end with the death of John Lennon, but it happened. And these things, I think, just drop into your head like a gift, like a diamond. Fantastic.
It's a wonderful, and it's actually very easy read. It just, you know, you don't want to put it down, and you just go, like, it just flows from one page to the next.
Good.
And that's me reading. So.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
It's true, Lucy, about you being fast. I remember when we were doing those short films with no dialogue, and we were meant to be doing 10, and Sky liked the one that Lucy did so much. They said, well, if we could get one more in for Ross Kemp, but we need it literally by something like next week. And by the next day, she'd already got an idea and was halfway through writing it. It was crazy.
Yeah, but you know, there were no words, so it was pretty easy.
I think that's harder.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's good. And you know, I've had a very blessed life, and I'm very conscious that each of you sitting there, you've all got these stories to tell. And I just think that it's nothing to do with me that I can tell this story. It is a gift from God, and you all have these stories, and they all are worthwhile listening to. And I would just encourage you, if you can, to get them down. We'll get it recorded anyway. Anyway, folks, I love you all. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy.
Congratulations. Mick, is there anything that you'd like to say to round off?
Well, just to say thank you to Lucy for reading so beautifully from her book, and for letting us publish it. It's been an honour. I mean, we've seen tonight how she can distill emotions in just a matter of a few words. If you haven't bought the book already, please buy it. If you have bought the book, Christmas is coming. Please buy it for all your friends. Everyone deserves to read this book. I feel, you know, we've been blessed tonight to listen to Lucy read and talk about her book, and I think we should share that with other people. So thanks again for coming, and yeah, have a safe few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Congratulations.